Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I'd love to know what you think. Every comment helps me make the next story better. Subscribe to stay tuned. I pulled into the driveway at 7:45, groceries in the back seat. The house looked different somehow. Too quiet. Too staged. Whitney sat at the kitchen island when I walked in, phone face down on the granite counter. Her posture was tense. Waiting. I set the bags on the counter. Hey, I got the things you asked for. She didn't look up. We need to talk about your tone earlier. My tone. When you texted about dinner. You were dismissive. Condescending. I replayed the conversation in my head. I'd asked if she wanted me to pick up anything for dinner. Simple question. No tone. Whitney, I just asked if you needed anything from the store. It's not what you said. It's how you said it. Her voice had that rehearsed quality I'd been noticing lately. Like she'd practiced this conversation before having it. This was the fourth argument in 2 weeks. Each one over something trivial. Each one ending the same way. I didn't mean anything by it, I said carefully. She stood up, crossing her arms. You never think you do anything wrong. That's the problem. I noticed small changes around the room. Our wedding photo from Newport was missing from the mantel. My grandmother's antique clock had been moved to the hallway. The guest bedroom door was closed, and I could smell fresh paint. What's going on? I asked. You're sleeping on the couch tonight. She delivered it with barely concealed satisfaction. Maybe tomorrow you'll learn to treat me with respect. I set down the last grocery bag slowly. Something clicked into place. All those manufactured arguments. All those nights on the couch. All those small changes I'd been noticing. No. She blinked. Excuse me? No. You're sleeping somewhere else now. Pack your things and get out. Her face transformed. The smug certainty melted into shocked disbelief. You can't. My grandfather's house. My name on the deed. You've been treating this like a hotel you manage, and I'm done being your problem guest. You have 1 hour. This is insane. The shock was giving way to anger now. Over one argument? Over 4 manufactured arguments in 2 weeks. Over 8 months of systematic manipulation. Over the fraud scheme you've been planning with Carson Reed. I watched her face go pale. Should I continue? What are you talking about? 1 hour, Whitney. Take your personal belongings. Everything else stays for proper inventory. Her mouth opened and closed. No words came out. I'd been waiting 3 weeks for this moment. 3 weeks earlier, I'd come home from my evening walk and heard her voice from the office. The door was slightly open. Once I get him to sign the quitclaim deed, we're good, she was saying. No, he won't read it carefully. He never does. The refinance goes through Friday, then we liquidate and split. Of course, before filing. He's been sleeping on the couch half the time anyway. Completely beaten down. I'd stood in the hallway, phone recording, finally understanding everything. That night, I'd lain on the couch staring at the ceiling. Not because she'd told me to. She hadn't even been home. I'd chosen it myself, trying to process what I'd heard. How long had this been happening? How many signs had I missed? I thought back over the past year. The subtle changes I dismissed as stress. Her new interest in property law. The way she'd insisted we open that joint checking account. Her suddenly busy social calendar. I told myself we were just going through a rough patch. That all marriages had ups and downs. That I needed to be more accommodating, more understanding. I'd been accommodating myself right out of my own house. The next morning, I'd acted completely normal. Made coffee. Asked about her day. Kissed her goodbye when she left for work. Then I'd gone straight to the filing cabinet. The insurance documents she'd left for me were sitting right on top. Convenient. The sticky note read, sign where I marked, just routine updates. I'd pulled them out and read every word. Quitclaim deed. Transferring my sole ownership to joint tenancy with rights of survivorship. The notary's signature looked practiced, but wrong. The seal was slightly smudged. I photographed every page with my phone, making sure the timestamps were visible. Then I put everything back exactly as I'd found it. I didn't sign anything. That afternoon, I called Trevor Walsh. We'd been roommates at Boston College, stayed in touch over the years. He practiced real estate law now, had his own firm on Federal Street. Rob, long time. What's up? I need legal advice. Can I come by today? Something in my voice must have registered. Come now. I'll clear my schedule. An hour later, I sat in his office, documents spread across his mahogany desk. Trevor read through everything twice, his expression growing darker. This is textbook fraud, he said finally. Forged notary, false ownership claims, systematic financial manipulation. He looked up at me. How long has this been going on? I'm not sure. I only discovered it yesterday. And you haven't confronted her? No. I wanted to know where I stood legally first. Trevor leaned back in his chair. Smart. Very smart. Here's what we do. Don't tip your hand. Not yet. Gather everything you can. Document everything. I'll start filing protective motions with the court, but we'll do it quietly. No drama, no confrontation. We build an airtight case, then we move all at once. How long will that take? However long it takes to get everything we need. Could be a week, could be a month. He pulled out a legal pad. Let's start with what you know. We spent 2 hours going through everything. The phone call I'd overheard. The forged documents. The patterns I'd noticed. The changes in behavior. She's been conditioning you, Trevor said. The couch thing, the manufactured arguments. It's psychological manipulation to break down your resistance. Once you're accepting that treatment as normal, you're less likely to question anything else. The words hit hard because they were true. What do I do? Go home. Act normal. Don't sign anything, obviously. Start documenting every interaction. Save every text, every email. Check your accounts daily. And call me immediately if anything changes. I stood to leave, then paused. Trevor, how bad could this get? He met my eyes. If she'd succeeded, you'd have lost your grandfather's house, the place you grew up visiting, the property that's been in your family for 3 generations. She'd have walked away with half the proceeds, and you'd have had almost no legal recourse because you'd have signed the quitclaim yourself. The weight of how close I'd come settled over me. But she didn't succeed, Trevor continued. You caught it. Now we make sure she doesn't get another chance. The next day, I started my investigation in earnest. I remembered Whitney had an old iPad she used to use before upgrading to a newer model. I found it in the guest room closet, still plugged in, still charging. When I opened it, I realized she'd never disabled the message sync feature. Every text message from her phone was right there. The conversation with Carson Reed went back 8 months. Hundreds of messages. I started reading from the beginning. The first messages were innocuous. Real estate investment advice. Market trends. Property opportunities. Then they shifted. Personal observations about me. My habits. My routines. My tendency to avoid conflict. Carson's messages became instructional. You need to establish a pattern. Make him think sleeping on the couch is normal. Once he accepts that, he'll accept anything. Whitney had responded, he's already so passive. This won't take long. I screenshot everything. Every single message. Backed them all up to a private cloud account she didn't have access to. The messages detailed everything. The timeline for getting me to sign the quitclaim deed. The plan to refinance immediately after. The strategy for selling the property before I could respond legally. Even their plan to split the proceeds and move to Portland together. One message from Carson stood out. Make sure you manufacture enough conflicts that when you file for divorce, you have a pattern of marital discord. It'll help with the property division arguments. Whitney had replied, don't worry. I've been setting that up for months. I sat in the guest room for an hour, reading through the entire history. Each message was another piece of evidence. Another nail in the coffin of our marriage. But I felt strangely calm. This wasn't grief anymore. It was clarity. I called Trevor again. I found her messages with Carson Reed. All of them. Can you forward them to me? Already done. Rob, this is better than I hoped. This is documented conspiracy. Premeditation. With this, we can file for emergency protective orders. We can freeze accounts. We can lock down the property completely. Not yet, I said. I want to know everything first. What else is she planning? Who else is involved? I want the complete picture before we move. Trevor was quiet for a moment. You're sure about this? I'm sure. All right. But the moment you think she's about to execute, you call me. We move immediately. Understood? Understood. Over the next week, I became a detective in my own life. I checked our joint checking account every day. I found 3 large withdrawals over the past 3 months. $8,900, $9,400, $9,800, always just under $10,000. The pattern was deliberate. Anything over $10,000 would trigger automatic reporting requirements. She knew exactly what she was doing. Total missing, $28,100. I called the bank. I need to verify some transactions on my account, I told the representative. She pulled up the records. I see 3 large withdrawals. Do you have questions about these? Yes. Can you tell me if they were made in person or through ATM? Let me check. These were all in-person withdrawals, made by the co-account holder. Do you have any video footage of these transactions? There was a pause. Sir, is there a problem with your account? I believe there may be unauthorized activity. I'd like to file a fraud report. I'll transfer you to our fraud department immediately. 20 minutes later, I'd filed official reports on all 3 withdrawals. The bank couldn't reverse them without proof of fraud, but they'd flag the account. Any future withdrawals over $1,000 would trigger a notification to both account holders. It wouldn't stop Whitney, but it would slow her down. I also discovered something else during that call. Whitney had attempted to open a home equity line of credit against the property. That application was flagged for verification, the representative told me. We need proof of ownership before we can proceed. I'm the sole owner of that property. It was inherited from my grandfather. Then you'll need to provide documentation of that. The application claims joint ownership. The application is fraudulent. I'll be sending you my grandfather's will and the property deed showing sole ownership. I'll make a note in the file. And sir, you may want to contact our fraud department about this as well. I did. Filed a second report. Got a case number. Then I drove to the Suffolk County Registry of Deeds. The clerk pulled up the records for my property. Sure enough, there was a recent filing. An attempted claim of joint ownership, dated 2 months ago. This was flagged for verification, the clerk explained. The signature didn't match our records for the property owner. That's because it's forged, I said. I'm the property owner. I never signed this. The clerk's expression turned serious. You need to file a police report. This is identity fraud and forgery. I will. Can I get copies of everything in the file? Absolutely. I left with a folder full of documents. Every fraudulent filing Whitney had made. Every forged signature. Every false claim. The evidence was piling up. That evening, I tracked Whitney's location using the Find My iPhone feature. We'd set it up years ago for safety reasons. She'd forgotten it was still active. She was at the Colonnade Hotel in Back Bay. She'd been there every Tuesday and Thursday for the past month. I cross-referenced with Carson Reed's social media. He'd checked in at the Colonnade Hotel on Instagram. Same nights. Same time periods. I screenshot everything. The next Tuesday, I followed her. I know that sounds extreme, but I needed to see it for myself. Needed to understand the full scope of what was happening. She met Carson in the hotel bar. They talked for 20 minutes, then took the elevator up together. I didn't follow them up. I didn't need to. I'd seen enough. I sat in my car in the parking garage and made a list. Everything I knew. Everything I could prove. Everything I still needed. The list was long, but it was thorough. When I got home that night, Whitney was already there. She asked how my day was. I said it was fine. She said she'd been at book club. I nodded. We were both lying, but only one of us knew it. The final piece fell into place a week later. Trevor's paralegal was doing background research on Carson Reed for our case. She found something interesting. There's a shared Google document, she told Trevor, who called me immediately. It's between Whitney's email and Carson's. The title is Project Liberation. Can you access it? We subpoenaed it through the court. It's a timeline, month by month. Everything they've been planning. Send it to me. When I opened the document, I felt something cold settle in my chest. Month 1 through 2, establish joint account access. Begin gaining trust. Month 3 through 4, start systematic withdrawals. Stay under reporting limits. Month 5 through 6, manufacture conflicts. Establish couch sleeping pattern. Break down resistance. Month 7, obtain property documents for signature. Forge notary if necessary. Month 8, execute quitclaim transfer. Refinance property immediately. Month 9, file for divorce. Sell property quickly. Split proceeds. Month 10, relocate to Portland, Maine together. Start new life. We were at the end of month 8. At the bottom of the document, Whitney had added a note. R is completely passive now. Couch routine fully established. He won't fight back. Never has, never will. I read that line 3 times. Never has, never will. She was wrong about the never will part. I called Trevor. We move tonight. She's planning to make her final push for the signature. I'm not giving her the chance. I'll file all the emergency motions this afternoon. Restraining order against property transfer. Asset protection. Everything. They'll be approved by end of business. What about criminal charges? I'll contact the DA's office. With what we have, they'll definitely want to pursue fraud charges against Carson. Whitney too, probably. Do it. All of it. I'm done playing defense. That afternoon, I went through the house systematically. I moved every item that had belonged to my grandfather or my family to a storage unit in Alston. The watches, the photos, the documents, the furniture pieces, everything. I changed all the passwords on our smart home system. The doorbell camera, the security system, the digital locks. Everything now reported only to my phone. I called a locksmith and scheduled him for the next morning. All exterior locks changed. Then I went grocery shopping, bought everything on Whitney's list, played the role one last time. When I got home, she was waiting, and I was ready. Now she stood in our kitchen, face flushed with anger and fear. "This is all a misunderstanding," she said, but her voice wavered. "Carson is just a friend helping with investment advice." Investment advice requiring hotel rooms? Interesting billable structure. She switched tactics. "You drove me to this. You're never present, always distant. I've been watching you systematically try to steal my family's home. That does tend to create distance. I'll take you for everything in the divorce. For marital property, yes. Property inherited before marriage with clear documentation? Mine alone. Your fraud scheme? That actually works against you." She tried tears next. Her eyes filled convincingly. "How can you be so cold? We've built a life together. You've built an exit strategy. I've simply discovered it before execution." The tears vanished. "Where am I supposed to go? Colonnade Hotel? You're clearly familiar with their accommodations. Or perhaps Carson has space, since you've been planning to move to Portland with him next month." Her sharp breath confirmed she hadn't known I'd found that detail. She grabbed her purse and stormed upstairs. I heard drawers opening, closet doors slamming. I stayed in the kitchen and made 3 phone calls. First, Trevor. "She's packing now." "Yes, I recorded everything." Second, a locksmith. "Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. All exterior locks." Third, the security company. "Update all codes tonight. Remove her access." 45 minutes later, a luxury SUV pulled into the driveway. Carson Reed walked in without knocking. Late 30s, expensive suit, practiced confidence. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" He positioned himself between me and the stairs. I didn't move from my seat. "You must be Carson Reed, real estate investor, formerly licensed in Maine and New Hampshire before fraud charges." His confidence faltered. "I don't know what she's told you. She didn't tell me anything. Public records did, as did the Suffolk County DA when I filed fraud reports this afternoon." "You can't prove." I slid a document across the counter. His own message to Whitney. "Make sure he signs before he reads carefully. Once the quitclaim processes, we're home free." That's out of context. Context is you've been coaching my wife to commit property fraud while conducting an affair and planning to liquidate my family's home for a 50-50 split. Carson's jaw tightened, but he was smart enough not to make threats. "Whitney, let's go. Now." She came downstairs with 2 suitcases and a shoulder bag. She paused at the door. "This isn't over." "Actually, it is. My attorney will contact yours. I recommend someone experienced in fraud defense." Carson muttered something about uptight bastards as he grabbed her bags. I stood and walked to the door. "Mr. Reed, one more thing. The storage unit in Brighton? My attorney obtained a warrant this afternoon. Police removed items matching my grandfather's estate inventory. That's theft in addition to fraud." His face went pale. 60 minutes are up," I said quietly. "Leave now." As they walked to the SUV, I heard Whitney's voice rise. "You said this would work. You said he'd never." The slamming car doors cut off the rest. I closed my door, locked it, and activated the new security code. The house was truly quiet now. Not the staged silence from earlier. Real quiet. I noticed the wedding photo was still missing. I didn't care. My grandmother's clock was back where it belonged. I'd moved it that afternoon. The guest room door stood open. I'd aired out the paint smell with open windows. I texted Trevor. "She's gone. Everything documented." His reply came quickly. "Meet tomorrow, 10 a.m. You did well." I poured myself some of my grandfather's whiskey, the bottle I'd hidden when items started disappearing. I sat in his chair, the one Whitney always said didn't match the decor. I thought about the past 8 months. All those manufactured arguments. All those nights on the couch, believing I was keeping the peace. I hadn't been keeping peace. I'd been enabling a con. The couch wasn't about sleeping arrangements. It was about hierarchy, about training me to accept diminished status, about breaking my will before the final theft. Every argument had been a test. Will he fight back or comply? Every time I chose the couch, I confirmed her assessment. Tonight, I'd finally failed her test. And in failing it, I'd passed my own. The next morning, I woke in my own bed. Sunrise came through the windows at 7:30. The doorbell rang at 7:45. 2 police officers stood on my porch. "Mr. Mitchell, we need to ask about a domestic disturbance report filed this morning." I invited them in, showed them the court documents from yesterday, the evidence of the fraud scheme, the timeline, the recording of last night, the texts Whitney had sent at 2 a.m. threatening to ruin me, security footage showing she'd left voluntarily with all her belongings. The officers reviewed everything carefully. "Sir, this appears to be a false report filed in retaliation. We'll note that in our records." "Already filed for a restraining order," I told them. "Hearing this afternoon." After they left, I checked my phone. 14 missed calls from Whitney. 3 voicemails from Carson. 1 text from Trevor confirming the emergency restraining order was approved. 1 email from the Suffolk County DA. My case had been assigned to the fraud unit. I made coffee. My coffee, in my kitchen, in my home. The phone rang. Unknown number. "Rob, please, we need to talk." Whitney's voice, desperate now. "Communicate through attorneys only. This call is being recorded." I hung up. The locksmith arrived right on time. 2 weeks later, I sat in Trevor's office reviewing developments. The DA was officially investigating. Carson had been interviewed twice. His previous dismissed charges were being re-examined. The restraining order was now permanent. Whitney couldn't contact me or approach the property. All claims against the house were dismissed. Title confirmed as mine through inheritance law. The joint account funds had been traced. Whitney claimed they went to investments. Actually, they'd gone to hotel stays, gifts for Carson, and a down payment on a Portland condo under Carson's name. All my grandfather's items were recovered from the storage unit. Whitney had filed a motion claiming emotional distress and constructive eviction. It was dismissed immediately. "She's desperate," Trevor said. "Her attorney is trying to negotiate. She'll return all withdrawn funds and sign away any property interest in exchange for you dropping criminal charges. What do you recommend?" Personally, I'd refuse. She committed felonies. But practically, a criminal case could drag on for years. You'd be free to move forward. And if I refuse? The DA proceeds regardless. You're not the victim, the state is. But your cooperation would strengthen their case. A week later, I sat in a conference room downtown. Whitney looked different. Thinner, exhausted, the polish gone. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Her attorney, Patricia Hammond, spoke first. "My client wishes to make a statement." Whitney read from a paper, voice shaking. "I acknowledge that I attempted to defraud Robert Mitchell of his property through forged documents and systematic deception. I apologize. I understand I have no legal claim to the Beacon Street property. I agree to return all withdrawn funds." I noted what was missing. No apology for the betrayal itself. Just legal liability. Patricia continued. "In exchange, Mr. Mitchell agrees not to pursue criminal charges and signs a confidentiality agreement." Trevor looked at me. "Your decision." "No," I said quietly. Whitney's head snapped up. "What?" "I won't pursue charges personally, but I won't ask the DA to drop them either. You committed crimes. That's between you and the state. I accept return of funds and property disclaimers. No confidentiality agreement. You don't get to hide what you did." "That's vindictive," Patricia objected. "That's accountability. Your client spent 8 months trying to steal my home while manipulating me emotionally. She involved a career criminal in property fraud. She manufactured arguments to break me down psychologically. Now she wants confidentiality so she can move on without consequences?" "No." Whitney spoke directly. I said I was sorry. "You apologized for legal liability. You haven't acknowledged the actual betrayal." I stood. "She signs quitclaim, returns funds, we process divorce. But no confidentiality. No cover-up." I walked to the door and paused. "You try to make me sleep on the couch as part of breaking me down for theft. You don't get to sleep comfortably now by hiding what you did." 1 month later, the divorce was finalized in Suffolk County Probate Court. Quick, administrative hearing. No drama. Whitney had signed everything. Funds returned. All property claims released. Marriage dissolved. Outside the courthouse, Whitney approached me one last time. A security guard stepped forward, but I waved him back. Was any of it real? She asked. I considered. The first year, maybe. Before Carson. Before you started seeing me as an asset instead of a person. I didn't mean for it to go this far. You meant for it to go exactly this far. You just didn't mean to get caught. I adjusted my coat. The DA will be contacting you about the criminal case. That's separate from us now. Will you testify against me? If subpoenaed, yes. Truthfully. She nodded, accepting this. For what it's worth, I am sorry. Not just for getting caught. For what I became. I studied her face. Found only exhaustion. I hope you figure out who you want to be. But figure it out somewhere far from me. I walked away without looking back. 3 months later, I stood in my house at early evening. I'd redecorated. Not extensively. Just enough to make it mine again. Wedding photos replaced with family photos. Grandfather's belongings back in their proper places. Guest room repainted properly. The couch sat at the curb with a free sign. I'd bought a new one. Every time I looked at the old one, I saw all those nights I'd chosen compliance over self-respect. A woman about my age approached, carrying a clipboard. Hi, I'm here about the couch. It's yours if you want it. Fair warning, bad memories attached. She laughed. Most free furniture comes with a story. I'm Lena. Rob. She studied me. You're the guy from the news. The property fraud case. I tensed. The case had made local news when Carson was indicted. That's me. Is that a problem? No. Actually impressive. My ex tried something similar. Financial manipulation. I didn't figure it out until he'd cleaned out the accounts. She gestured to the couch. This part of moving on. Something like that. Good for you. She pulled out her phone. I'll call my brother for pickup. While she made the call, I watched sunset paint Beacon Street orange and gold. My street. My home. My peace. My phone rang. Trevor. Quick update. Carson took a plea deal. 5 years, restitution, permanent ban from real estate. Whitney accepted immunity in exchange for testimony against him. She won't face charges if she completes a fraud prevention program and stays clean for 2 years. That's it. For her, yes. DA felt she was manipulated by someone with prior fraud history. Community service, restitution to you, supervised probation. Could be better. Justice isn't always satisfying. But you got your property, your peace, and she got consequences. That's more than most people get. He was right. Most people never get closure. Never get to watch the trap spring shut on the trapper instead. Lena finished her call. Brother's on his way. Can I ask you something? Sure. How did you know when to stop trusting? When to fight back? I considered the question. When I realized that keeping peace was just enabling war. That choosing the couch wasn't avoiding conflict. It was accepting defeat in a fight I didn't know I was in. She nodded slowly. I wish I'd figured that out sooner. You figured it out eventually. That's what matters. Her brother arrived with a truck. They loaded the couch. As they drove away, Lena waved. Thanks for the couch. And the advice. I turned back to my house. My grandfather's house. Earned through hard work and left to me with love. The house someone tried to steal using psychological warfare disguised as marriage. The house that was mine alone now, with new locks and clear title and no shadows. I walked inside and closed the door. For the first time in months, I felt completely at home. The couch was gone. Whitney was gone. Carson was headed to prison. The fraud charges were resolved. The divorce was final. But the real victory wasn't in their defeat. It was in rediscovering my own backbone. For 8 months, I'd been trained to accept less. Less respect, less comfort, less autonomy. Every manufactured argument had been a test of compliance. Every couch declaration had been a marker of diminishing status. Until the night I said no. Not with violence. Not with cruelty. Just with clear, calm, definitive refusal to participate in my own subjugation. The house was quieter now. Emptier in some ways. But honest. And honest quiet beats manipulative company every single time. I poured my grandfather's whiskey into his glass, sat in his chair, and raised a toast to the photograph on the mantel. Thanks for the inheritance, Grandpa. Not just the house. The spine to defend it. The ice clinked softly in the glass. Outside, Beacon Street was settling into evening. Neighbors walking dogs. Couples heading to dinner. Normal life continuing around me. My phone buzzed. A text from Trevor. By the way, the bank returned the investigation fees to your account. Said it was company policy when fraud is confirmed. Small win, but thought you'd want to know. Small win. I smiled at that. The whole thing had been built on small wins. Small discoveries. Small decisions. Small moments of choosing to investigate rather than ignore. I typed back. Thanks for everything, Trevor. Couldn't have done this without you. That's what friends are for. Dinner next week? Celebrate properly? Sounds good. I set the phone down and looked around the living room. My living room. Every piece of furniture, every photograph, every memory now unmarred by deception. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 8 times. Same clock that had been in this house for 40 years. Same house that had weathered storms, seasons, and now one very calculated attempt at theft. It was still standing. And so was I. I raised my glass one more time, this time to myself, to knowing when to say no. Dear listeners, that's our ending. If it resonated, subscribe to support the channel. See you next time.